Hi there, just to say this is a short snippet from this week's main episode, which was published on Wednesday as always. If you want the full episode, you can find it just below this one. This question is, why do I excel at my hobbies and interests? Ask that to yourself right now. If you've got a particular hobby you enjoy, an interest, and you put a lot of time into it and people notice that you're above average or even outstanding in that area, or even your career, if you've got a successful career or just any area in your life where you stand out, ask yourself, why do I excel at this? And just as I'm talking here, try and find your own answer to that question, but continue to listen, because there are many ways to answer this question. We're going to look at a small selection just so you see the different ways that we can look at this. Now, if you're from my parents' and grandparents' generations, I was born in the 90s, my parents were born in the 60s, my grandparents were born in the 1940s, the very early 1940s, just before the Second World War started. Their answers are very telling as to how they view the human being and why we are the way we are. Their explanation for why people excel at things is basically comes down to genetics, that it runs in the family, that it's inherited, and that it's basically just like random selection. So for example, if you're a good musician and you ask someone from my parents or my grandparents' generation, hey, why am I a good musician? They'll say, oh, it's just in your genes. And you say, well, okay, I understand that if my mum and dad are musicians, that maybe there's a genetic factor there. But if my mum and dad aren't musicians, how on earth can I be good? And they might say, well, your great granddad played the violin a little bit. So there it is in the family. And it's going to be hard for them to kind of see another point of view. I mean, listen, I'm just talking about my own experience in general of how my parents and grandparents' generations see something like this, but that might not be the case for you. But in any case, I'm sure you know people that view it like this. Another person might say that it's to do with your life history, so it's more of a behavioural explanation. So they would say something like, well, you are very good in this area because you've slowly built the habits. You've been passionate about your hobbies for many years. You're an ambitious person. You're autonomous. You don't need someone to kick you up in the backside to get you to practice your instrument or whatever. Or to, do some painting on the side. You just do it yourself. You deeply grasp how learning works, and so you know what to do, and you know what needs to go into something for you to get really good at it. Someone could, people quite easily hold that point of view. That's a very specific way of saying why you are very good in this area, why you are the way you are in this area. Do you hold that point of view? You could also look at the zeitgeist. You could say, well, why do I excel at my hobbies and interests? And you could say, well, it's because we live in an individualist era in which it's advantageous to excel at different pursuits because it makes you stand out. It's good to have like other interests. It's good for your CV because it shows that you're autonomous, that you take the initiative, that you overcome your fear, that you're willing to grow, that there's more to your life than just your career, which might not always be an advantage in certain careers, but in others it certainly is. You might say, well, it's also because it's easier to learn than ever before because there's the internet and there's so many websites. Like if you want to learn anything, you can pretty much go from zero to hero just by watching free YouTube videos. There's so many resources. There's, if you want a book delivered to your house, you can get one in a few days quite easily. And you can be living anywhere in the world, whereas 100 years ago, if you wanted to learn some weird instrument, you'd be struggling to learn it. You'd have to travel. You might have to even move to a different village or city just to learn an instrument, because there was no other way to do it back in the day. We have more free time nowadays because there's not, we've got modern appliances and we're not working out in the fields all day, and, we've just got a lot of modern comforts and give us more free time. You see, that's another totally legitimate set of explanations for why we're good at something. And you might even give like a more analytical explanation. You could say, well, you had some early experiences in that area. Maybe you wanted to become an artist because you went to some art exhibition when you were younger, and something, even though you're young, you didn't really understand the art very well. Maybe there was some painting that really caught your eye, and that became lodged in your mind for all these years, and it's sort of driven you in the background for many years to get good at this thing. That's a more analytical and more sort of looking at the subconscious. You see that, and listen, that's just a very short. We've looked at genetics, we've looked at behaviour, we've looked at the zeitgeist, which are more cultural, social explanation. We've looked at the unconscious. Those are just 4 areas. We could look at so many other areas that would explain why you excel at your hobbies and interests, right? And it's interesting to notice that none of these answers are complete on their own. Some of them I don't agree with, but even the ones I do agree with aren't a full explanation. They have their own flaws, and you can't explain the whole thing by them just by looking at that one point of view, for example. Because who we are is really a complex mosaic that depends on individual and collective forces. And there's so many of those forces that it's really tricky to narrow it down. And that's not a flaw. That's just the nature of why we are the way we are. It's a very complex set of forces guiding why we become the way we are. Hi there, just to say this is a short snippet from this week's main episode, which was published on Wednesday as always. If you want the full episode, you can find it just below this one.